Anna had always prided herself on being a devoted wife. She and Mark had been married for 6 years, building a quiet, stable life together. Mark was kind and reliable, the kind of man who paid the bills on time, always remembered anniversaries, and kissed her on the forehead before leaving for work each morning. But predictability, as comforting as it was, had begun to feel like a chain around her neck. It started at one of Mark's office parties. Anna rarely attended, preferring to avoid the dull corporate small talk, but this time, Mark insisted. "Mr. Gallagher wants to meet you," he said, eyes bright with the excitement of someone eager to impress his superiors. "It's a great opportunity for me." She sighed but relented. Mark's boss, Richard Gallagher, was everything her husband wasn't: charismatic, confident, a man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. His tailored suit hugged his frame in all the right places, and when he shook Anna's hand, he held it just a second too long. She noticed his smirk when their eyes met, and for the first time in years, she felt something stir deep inside her. The affair didn't happen overnight. It began with stolen glances at company events, then texts that started as casual but quickly turned into something else entirely. Anna told herself she was just playing along, indulging in harmless flirtation. But deep down, she knew she was falling. Mark was working late more often, pushing himself harder to secure a promotion. He would come home exhausted, too drained to ask about her day, too distracted to notice the guilt shadowing her eyes. And Richard, he was the opposite. He asked her things Mark never did, like what books she liked, what dreams she had buried over the years. He made her feel seen. The first time it happened was in Richard's penthouse apartment, a place that reeked of power and temptation. She hesitated, standing in the doorway, her heart pounding. But when he pulled her in, his lips crashing against hers, the hesitation melted away. She had expected guilt to hit her immediately after, but instead, there was only a strange sense of relief, like she had finally allowed herself to breathe. Weeks passed, and Anna became an expert at deception. She smiled at Mark as if nothing had changed, cooked his favorite meals, let him hold her at night, all while carrying the secret weight of another man's touch. But secrets have a way of unraveling when you least expect it. One evening, Mark came home earlier than usual, his face pale, hands trembling. "We need to talk," he said, his voice thick with something she couldn't yet name. Anna's stomach twisted. "What's wrong?" Mark exhaled sharply, pulling out his phone. "I got an anonymous email today. Pictures, Anna, of you and Richard." Her blood turned to ice. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The silence stretched between them, suffocating. "I trusted you," Mark whispered, his voice breaking. "I worked so hard for us, for our future." Tears welled in her eyes. "Mark, don't." He stood up, shaking his head. "I can't look at you right now." And just like that, the foundation she had built with Mark crumbled. She had chased excitement, but at what cost? Standing alone in their living room, Anna realized too late that some mistakes could never be undone. Sophia had always believed in loyalty, to her husband, Daniel, to their marriage, to the life they had built together. For 8 years, they had been the perfect couple, or at least, that was how it seemed to everyone else. But perfection, she had learned, was just another illusion. Then there was Emily, Sophia's best friend since college. They had been inseparable for years, sharing secrets, dreams, and laughter. Emily was vibrant and adventurous, a stark contrast to Sophia's careful, measured approach to life. It had always been a friendship filled with warmth and trust, until it became something else. It started innocently. A late-night talk over wine, the conversation drifting into confessions. Sophia spoke of the emptiness she felt, the routine of marriage that had become more obligation than passion. Emily listened, eyes filled with understanding, her hand gently resting over Sophia's, a touch that lingered just a moment too long. One evening, Daniel was away on a business trip, and Emily came over to keep Sophia company. They drank, laughed, and reminisced about their younger days. But as the night wore on, the distance between them disappeared. Emily reached for Sophia's hand again, her fingers tracing slow patterns against her skin. It was electric, intoxicating. When their lips met, it was as if years of buried emotions had finally surfaced. Desire, longing, and an undeniable chemistry neither had ever dared to acknowledge before. Sophia knew it was wrong, knew she was stepping over a line that could never be erased, and yet she didn't stop. The affair was unlike anything she had ever experienced. With Emily, she felt free, seen in a way Daniel had never quite managed. It was passionate, reckless, and utterly consuming. They found stolen moments between errands, secret rendezvous when Daniel was at work, whispered phone calls in the dead of night. Every time Sophia looked at her husband, guilt gnawed at her, but not enough to make her stop. Then came the moment when everything unraveled. One evening, Daniel came home unexpectedly early. Sophia and Emily had been careless, their closeness undeniable. The way Emily touched Sophia's arm, the guilty flicker in Sophia's eyes, it was enough. Daniel watched in silence before finally speaking. "How long?" His voice was eerily calm, but his clenched fists betrayed the storm beneath. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. "Daniel, How long?" he repeated, his voice harder now. Emily looked away, her face pale. Sophia swallowed. "A few months." Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I never thought. Never with her." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Finally, he turned away. "I need to think," he muttered, walking toward the door. As he left, Sophia stood frozen, watching the life she had built begin to collapse. She had wanted passion, something beyond the routine of marriage. But now, all she felt was the sharp sting of betrayal, both given and received. And she knew, deep down, that some wounds never truly heal. Lena had always believed in boundaries. Family was family, and love belonged within its proper confines. Her marriage to Ethan had been steady, built on mutual respect and a quiet kind of devotion. They had spent 10 years together, growing from young lovers into responsible adults with careers, a home, and a shared history. But there was one complication: Nathan, her stepbrother. Nathan had entered her life when they were both teenagers, after their parents remarried. They had never been particularly close, maintaining a cordial but distant relationship throughout their youth. But when Nathan moved back to town years later, something shifted. Ethan welcomed Nathan warmly, seeing him as extended family. He invited him over often, bonding over football and weekend barbecues. To everyone, Nathan was simply her stepbrother, a relative, a guest. But to Lena, he became something else entirely. It started with small moments. A glance held a second too long, a casual touch that sent a jolt through her skin. She told herself it was nothing. But then there were the conversations, deep, intimate, laced with unspoken thoughts neither of them dared to voice. With Nathan, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. One night, after a dinner party at their house, Ethan had gone to bed early, leaving Lena and Nathan alone in the dimly lit living room. They sat close, the air between them thick with tension. When Nathan reached out, tracing his fingers along her wrist, she didn't pull away. The kiss that followed was inevitable, the weight of years collapsing into that single reckless moment. Their affair was an earthquake in slow motion. Stolen moments when Ethan was at work, whispered confessions in the dark, the dangerous thrill of something forbidden. Lena knew it was wrong, but with Nathan, she felt something she hadn't in years. Wanted, understood, consumed by a fire she couldn't extinguish. But secrets have a way of surfacing. One evening, as she returned home, She found Ethan sitting at the dining table, Nathan's jacket draped over the chair beside him. His expression was unreadable, his fingers wrapped tightly around the stem of his glass. "Is there something you want to tell me?" he asked, his voice quiet but firm. Lena froze. Her heart pounded. "What do you mean?" Ethan leaned forward. "I'm not an idiot, Lena. It's him, isn't it?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Ethan, How long?" he interrupted, his voice raw with emotion. She swallowed hard, looking at the man she had once promised forever to. "A few months." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing against a physical blow. Then, with a slow exhale, he stood up. "I need space." She watched as he walked past her, his silence heavier than any words could be. And just like that, the world she had known shattered. She had thought she was chasing passion, but in the end, all she had found was the bitter taste of betrayal.